I'm joined now by former FBI analyst Joh Sullivan. John, we spoke about a week or so ago when you had just resigned from the FBI. This was, of course, in the immediate aftermath of all of these cuts that Donald Trump and Elon were making that were making the agency and national security more broadly decidedly less safe. I know that you have an announcement that you'd like to make now, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having me. I have to say, the outpouring of support from individuals who saw our interview and discussion about a week ago has been really, really inspiring. And so I wanted to come back and share with you and your viewers that I am running for Congress and I am going to make sure that Mike Lawler is no longer in Congress. And so I am announcing today that I will be jumping into the race for New York's 17th congressional district.
Well, congratulations on the announcement. Why is this district in particular so important? Can you talk a little bit about New York 17th and the current Congressman Mike Lawler?
Sure. So I think it's important to note that Mike Lawler is really Elon's favorite. He is the person who received the most funding from Elon Musk during the 2024 election. He actually brags about it, almost $2 million of support. New York 17, the Hudson Valley as a whole, has been really important to me and my family over the years. My husband and I got married here. This is where we always wanted to raise our son and set down, long-term community engagement and roots and working with the local community. But I think what's really important is to note is that I worked in the New York FBI office. I served this area and I lived in this area in Westchester County. So this is an opportunity really for me to come back, do what I can to support the community, but more importantly, show Mike Lawler the door and show that Elon Musk isn't in charge of who becomes a member of Congress and who represents the Hudson Valley.
Why is it important at this particular moment in time that somebody who worked in national security in a law enforcement agency serve in the United States Congress?
As we talked about during our last meeting, I think it's important to realize just how unsafe we're becoming as a country. And the efforts that Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Mike Lawler sitting idly by and rubber stamping those efforts have really made our communities less safe. But more than that, in addition to making our communities less safe, they've also been very flippant with our security as well as our economy, as we've seen with these tariffs that are on and off again, as we've seen from the going after Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare to cut those agencies and to cut those benefits. So I've worked inside the government. I've been there as a national security official and an executive in the FBI. I know how this is supposed to work. I know what it looks like when government is doing its job. And I know what it looks like when we are giving law enforcement the support they need, holding criminals accountable, but at the same time protecting our communities to make sure, look, I'm a dad. I have a 6-year-old. I want to make sure that he can go to school every day and I don't have to worry about his safety or someone going into his school and being an active shooter. Just like we have seen in the past with attacks on different locations, whether it be houses of worship or offices, Donald Trump and Mike Lawler and Elon Musk have been doing everything possible, working through Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to cut the support for domestic terrorism and other key law enforcement activities that keep us safe. So I'm going to bring that experience of working cartels on the southern border, tracking fentanyl into the United States, working counterterrorism in Africa and the Middle East, as well as tracking foreign adversaries for my time in New York. And I'm going to bring that solution-oriented focus to Congress to make sure we're actually representing those who elect us to go to Congress and not oligarchs and billionaires.
You know, it's interesting that you bring up a lot of these issues: southern border, fentanyl, keeping schools safe, streets safe, crime more broadly, because this is an issue that Republicans have largely co-opted. But I mean, judging by what you just said, while they claim to be these champions on the issues of safety, the reality is that by virtue of putting people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel in charge, they are actually exacerbating those very issues by taking resources away from the issues they claim to care about so that they can instead focus on their political pet projects.
You're absolutely right. I think I hit on during our last conversation the hypocrisy of the appointments of some of these individuals like Patel and Bongino, who from the outside, used to disgrace our national security and law enforcement organizations, calling them all sorts of names and politicizing them from the outside. But then they get inside and they say, trust us, there's good work going on. Meanwhile, the actions they're taking from the inside are actually tearing down our security and safety. So, look, not every Democrat who's ever gotten involved in a race for Congress has had a national security and law enforcement background like I do. And so I think it's important that we have a new generation of leadership who's stepping forward as a millennial. It's important to show that we are getting more involved and doing everything we can to have that conversation about how do we really advance the efforts of those who we represent. And so that's why getting involved in this race is so important, because I understand how to get those things done compared to what we're seeing from Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and others who are really doing everything possible to make us less safe and please Donald Trump. And Mike Lawler has just been another rubber stamp of that. You've seen what he's done to go after Medicare, and in particular, the Social Security office here in the Hudson Valley. He's just rubber stamping, and he's not really representing those in the Hudson Valley who need us and to have a voice in Congress.
You know, as it relates to our national security, obviously a big story that just broke this past weekend was a second Signal chat has emerged as far as Pete Hegseth is concerned. Now he's not just sending war plans over an unsecured app to other members of the administration, but I believe now his family members were the recipients of these war plans. Because why wouldn't Pete Hegseth's wife want to be privy to exactly what's happening with regard to our war planning here? So can I have your reaction to that, to an administration that, you know, and a political party that for so long has beat up the Democrats for being reckless or careless with national security information, that is now just trafficking in overt recklessness?
It is absolutely absurd, illegal. Misusing classified information is something that's very serious. I have over 17 years of having some of the highest security clearances in our government with access to some of the most sensitive information that exists. You do not use signal chats. You do not use unclassified means to talk about important war planning. And look, my husband has a security clearance. He has been in the government. We don't talk about that stuff at home because in addition to having a clearance, you have to have a need to know. Not to get too wonky about this, but if you don't need to know the information like Pete Hegseth's wife, you shouldn't know it. And so what we're seeing is a brazen disregard, right? I mentioned before, the rules haven't changed. Donald Trump and his cabinet are just choosing to ignore the rules and ignore the law. We've seen this consistently from Donald Trump, though. He took the oath to the Constitution on January 20th and then quickly released insurrectionists into our communities. I worked the January 6th cases. That was just a kick in the gut, right? We've done this work to ensure that our communities are safe, to ensure that our national security is protected, to ensure that classified information doesn't end up in the hands of someone who shouldn't have it. Wouldn't you love to have, I'm sure Russia, Vladimir Putin would love to be in those signal chats, and who's to say he's not? Because while they're encrypted, they're not secure like government communications. So it is a brazen disregard by the Republicans. I have not been seeing a lot of outrage from Republican members of Congress, and I can assure you that if we continue down this path, not only is our country going to become less secure, the norms and laws are going to be quickly forgotten, and we will not be able to hold these individuals accountable. And that's why I'm jumping in, and that's why I'm running for Congress to represent Hudson Valley.
To that point, you know, can I get your reaction to the fact that Mike Lawler and the rest of this Republican Party are sitting idly by while Donald Trump is right now disregarding the will of a 6-3 Republican, far-right Republican Supreme Court, even as it relates to the issue of wrongly deporting, this is their words, not mine,
Right.
as the result of an administrative error, illegally deporting a migrant to a foreign gulag somewhere, and yet Donald Trump's sole concern here is, I guess, trying to usurp all of the power of the federal government, disregard the will of the judicial branch. I would say the legislative branch too, but that's the point here, is these people are not asserting their own authority. So can I get your reaction to the fact that we do have Republicans like your Republican opponent who don't seem to mind that they are contracting every ounce of their autonomy over to the executive branch?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's simple civics, right? Last time I checked, there were 3 co-equal branches of government. We've just never had a point in our history where Republicans who talk about adhering to the Constitution on the regular, whether they're stumping or doing a media hit, they go out of their way now to give away that authority. This is how you get a dictator or an authoritarian. And so I think that what's most important is having a Congress that is representing the views of the American people, and in New York 17, the views of the people of the Hudson Valley. What's so important that I've heard from my conversations with New Yorkers recently is they're just tired of the chaos. The chaos has just gotten out of control, and people just want a little bit of semblance of normalcy. What Mike Lawler is doing by sitting idly by and letting Donald Trump rule as a king and ignore the judicial branch and not stepping forward and saying, no, we need to hold you to account. You are not following the rule of law. He is adding to the chaos. He's turning up that volume. He's really great at saying, that he is holding Trump to account. But when you actually look at the record, he's not. He's sitting there as an enabler and supporter. And I think that's probably why Elon Musk sees him as his favorite member of Congress and gave him almost $2 million in the 2024 election, and why Mike Lawler brags about that. It's because he's getting rewarded for his obedience to Donald Trump and complete disregard to the Constitution.
New York 17th has been a battleground seat, a swing district for quite a while, and yet Democrats haven't been able to unseat Mike Lawler in the last few election cycles. Why will your race be different?
Yeah, I think that while this district is an area that is more purple, right? It does have that swing nature to it. I think that the candidates that have come forth in the past haven't had the background and experience that I've had, haven't been willing to step out of the government, identify the crisis that's going on inside, whether it relates to our national security, economic security, and others, and call these individuals to account. I'm not going to be somebody who comes into a community or talks to a town and says, here is the problem and this is why I'm going to fix it. I want to hear from people. I want to know what the problems are that they see. There are trends happening across the communities right now that people are feeling concerned about different things, whether it be the price of groceries or it be something more unique, like property taxes. Having those conversations is going to be key to making sure that we can hold Mike Lawler accountable. Because I mentioned he's been, working so closely with Donald Trump to pass a tax cut bill for billionaires while shutting down services here. So I'm going to call him out every step of the way because he needs to be held accountable. And in the past, we haven't had somebody with my background, somebody who can go into the different communities that often the Democratic Party has left behind and talk about my background in law enforcement, national security, and serving the country overseas, combating terrorists and cartels and insurrectionists and those from foreign governments who wish to do us harm. So I think that we are at an opportune moment now for some new leadership, individuals who know how to get solutions, know how to get the job done, and someone who's going to hold Mike Lawler accountable. And that's why I think I'm uniquely situated in this race to be the next congressman from New York 17 and defeat Mike Lawler.
John, how can folks who are watching right now help your campaign?
Yeah, thank you so much. It is going to take an army. It is going to take as many possible supporters as we have joining this campaign. As we mentioned, I just left the FBI recently, so this is a new thing for me. And so what I'm learning is donations and pitching into the campaign matters so much so we can get our message out. So I hope people can go to johnsullivan4ny.com who can contribute to the campaign, join up, help us kind of flip this district and kick Mike Lawler out of Congress.
Awesome. Well, we'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. John, appreciate your time today and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. And thank you to your viewers.